I fucking love Halo, man. The first time I picked it up, I immediately fell in love with the world it presented. And holy shit, that soundtrack. However, not all the games have been like that. While Halo 4 was somewhat divisive, a lot of the criticisms from its fans seemed to lean more towards the multiplayer and the art style. While the campaign wasn't perfect, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and looked forward to where the story was headed. And then Halo 5 happened. While the multiplayer and gameplay side of things was actually somewhat enjoyable, the story of Halo 5 was shit. A huge wasted opportunity, and a waste of time if I'm being honest with myself. I don't want to delve too much into what has already been extensively covered. Instead, what I want to do is rewrite the story myself in order to create not only what I think would be a great follow-up to Halo 4, but something that is a lot more along the lines of what was advertised. I'm not going to do anything in regards to the gameplay or the art style. This is purely a story rewrite, but I do have some notes on it. Now, unlike the Game of Thrones rewrite, the way this is going to work is I'm going to do a complete walkthrough of my new version of the story, more or less mission by mission. As I said, I love the premise of the game, so I'm going to be as true as I can to the lore, where everyone is by the end of the game, and the marketing, while keeping the foundations of the actual campaign. It's still a shit ton of work, so this will likely be multiple parts. This has been in the back of my head since I finished the campaign, and as the rewrite I've been the most excited and nervous about finally doing. With that, I've had enough of keeping it in my head, so it's about time I share it with whoever might watch this. The opening cutscene to Halo 5 is a curious one. On its own, it sets up some rather interesting ideas, but then does nothing with it. One of the bigger letdowns of this game was this conspiracy that was built up over the amazing Hunt the Truth audio series about the truth of the Spartan program. In general, Halo 5 was set to be this game that would explore the repercussions of the program and the effect it had on the Spartans and everyone else involved. In fact, the games in general have never really addressed many details on the Spartan program, and while it was never much issue during the original trilogy, Halo 4 planted seeds for it to be explored in future installments. In fact, Locke's entire character seemed founded on the conspiracies that have lurked in the shadows throughout all the games. It seemed finally we might be getting answers to some of these questions in the games, not just in other material like the books. That brings me to the first mission, which I'm renaming Operation Osiris. So I am completely removing the squad aspect from the game and all the other members of Fireteam Osiris. While I'd like to see a squad-based Halo game, I really don't think this is a game to implement it, as there is already so much going on in the story that I think it needs to just focus on Locke and Chief. The mission is more or less the same. Locke is tasked with extracting Dr. Catherine Halsey and as an optional objective, eliminating Joel Mdama. While the mission proceeds the same way, introducing players to the new gameplay mechanics, I do think it needs to strictly be Covenant players face rather than throwing every enemy type into the first mission. Locke is an assassin, so I think we need to lean into that a little more too, perhaps incorporate a few stealth mechanics on top of the Spartan abilities. Back to the story though. At the end we successfully retrieve Halsey, but Mdama is nowhere to be found, having escaped as soon as Locke was discovered, which very much angers the Spartan. There weren't too many characters 343 introduced that I really liked, but Joel Mdama was definitely one of them, being the highlight of the Kilo 5 trilogy of books. It was such a waste killing him off at the beginning in his first proper appearance in a campaign. I don't think he needs to appear in this game that much anyway, but I do think his character should be spared to develop further outside of the campaign. As a side note, I have some thoughts on how Spartan Ops could have gone had it returned in this installment, however, I may save that for another video. I'll make a note here that the only canon changes I wish to make are with elements of the graphic novel Escalation, in particular the next 72 hours arc. To quickly sum it up, it shows a reunion of Master Chief with Blue Team and their journey to defeat the Didact a second time. It's a complete waste of the Didact, and I'll get to that part, but for now I want to focus on Blue Team. Now, Halo 5 Guardians marks the first time Blue Team has made an appearance in a Halo game, and actually the first time other than Reach we've met any other Spartan 2s. Now initially I thought the reunion between Chief and Blue Team needed to happen in the game, but I think the game just needs to make a bigger deal of their appearance. For people who have just played the games, they're going to have no idea who these characters are. All it takes is showing a reunion and a little conversation at the beginning of the mission. So the mission starts off with them reuniting on the Infinity and being tasked with investigating a colony world whose communications have been lost, as there have been Covenant activity in nearby systems. Here also comes my only big gameplay change I wish to make. I think Chief and Blue Team should not have any of the new Spartan abilities that Locke has, and should be relegated to old style movement, with the addition of sprint for continuity. I think they should also be slightly slower, but able to take more damage. The mission starts with little combat, but we learn more about the other members of the team as they explore the planet. I think Meridian could work as this planet, and even have some interaction with civilians. We learn that the entire planet was affected by some strange shockwave that cut all the power, and Covenant activity has been seen since then. Throughout the mission, Chief keeps seeing strange things that disrupt his visor. A less annoying version of the Halo 3 Cortana dreams, of course.
No, God!
I
No,
have defied
God, please,
gods
no!
and demons.
No! No!
Blue Team eventually find some Covenant and soon learn that there is a massive Forerunner structure beneath the surface that no one knew about, so Chief gives the go-ahead to investigate, although the weird glyphs are becoming more consistent. Eventually they make it inside the structure, but Chief is even more distracted by the glyphs and the voices he has now started to hear. At the end of the mission, Chief wanders off from the team slightly to a Forerunner panel that the voices seem to be leading him towards. When he activates it, the room seals off from the rest of Blue Team, and leads Chief towards another panel, that when he presses opens a portal. Chief hesitates until he can make out Cortana's voice, then rushes through the portal. Mission 3 brings the first physical appearance of Lasky, Palmer and Roland in this game. As Locke brings Halsey aboard the Infinity, she is taken away to be interrogated. These characters needed much more screen time in the campaign. Locke is eventually tasked by Lasky to find Blue Team after contact with also lost with them. Locke initially rejects the mission as he doesn't see it worth his abilities, but Lasky tells him that if something could take out Blue Team, they would need the best to find out what happened. I had a thought to maybe give Locke a personal pilot, one that ferries him from mission to mission, but I'm not stuck to the idea and think maybe an AI would work better, whether it's Roland or a new AI. We'll just have this placeholder character be Roland for the sake of giving him a name. The bulk of this mission takes place on the same map as the last mission, but with a giant crater to one side and the buildings all destroyed. As you make your way through the ruins and the remaining Covenant, you reach the Forerunner structure that Blue Team entered. Eventually you find Blue Team but discover that the Chief has disappeared. As you explore new parts of the structure, you come to the room that Chief teleported away from, and Roland confirms that it's indeed a Forerunner portal system. You also learn that the structure was merely a foundation, as if it used to house something. When you try to activate it, the group is greeted by the Warden Eternal, who denies them passage. You defeat him and are forced to extract when the structure collapses in on itself. Essentially, what I wanted to do here was shorten all the Meridian missions into one for Chief and one for Locke, because it in no way needed to be 4 missions. What I also want to do is, instead of Locke's mission immediately being a hunt turning into a rescue, I wanted to flip it round, having it begin as a search and rescue, and the midpoint being the realization that Chief is activating the Guardians on purpose. The game was marketed as the beginning of one of the biggest hunts in gaming, and it really wasn't. Mission 4 brings about our second Chief mission, and is last for a while. I know people had complaints on how little time we got to play as the super soldier, but I didn't mind it. In fact, I thought it may have been the case anyway, considering he was seemingly going to be the antagonist for the game. I think the problem lay with Locke, and how boring he was. I will hopefully try and mend that as we go along. However, that does not mean the Chief will not be present in any of the other missions. Blue Team starts with the remaining members of said team being questioned by Palmer, with Lasky, Roland and Locke observing from another room. It is immediately apparent that Locke does not trust what is going on and is already assuming the worst. We get more information on the Chief never turning down a mission and always in the field, but it's apparent that they're holding something back. The actual mission begins with the Master Chief emerging from the portal he entered onto what he will eventually learn is Genesis, the homeworld for all the Guardians like the one he just activated. This mission is more or less a reunion mission, except only the Chief is present. We meet the Monitor Exuberant Witness, who explains to the Chief the basics of Genesis and its purpose. Now I think she was introduced way too late into the game, as she was one of the more interesting character additions in this game. As she leads you around, it appears some kind of glitch is affecting her, something similar to what was happening to the Chief. Witness states that something is tampering with her systems, and restoring various consoles may help stop it. By the end of the mission, Master Chief reaches a massive Forerunner structure, and it's well beyond clear that the person trying to contact you was Cortana. Exuberant Witness seems to be repaired, however Chief is distracted by the faint signal of Cortana. What he manages to make out is something about her being stuck inside the Forerunner domain, and that the Guardians are the key to unlocking it. She used the last of her power to wake one Guardian, but the Chief will need to activate all of them. He presses a button which makes them dormant, another portal opens, and the Chief steps through it. By now, Chief has placed all the Guardians in a state where similar communications outages are happening on various planets. The UNSC scrambles to reach the sites on human colonies, and Locke is dispatched to the one with the strongest power outage. I think by the start of the mission, the Chief should have already activated another Guardian as well. This could actually be a good opportunity to canonize that initial teaser. I don't think we need all 7 of the Guardians to have a dedicated mission, and I think it makes sense for the Chief to have less and less time to activate each one as the UNSC figures out what he's doing. It is also a point of contention at the beginning of the mission that there is a signature coming from Sanghelios, and whether they should warn them about the threat or not. 2 things I want to note here. 1. While I was fine with John not having too many playable missions, he didn't have a presence in the game outside of those missions. As a somewhat antagonist, Chief needs to be far more active in the story other than hanging out on Genesis. That's why Chief is going to have to manually activate all the Guardians. This makes the hunt an actual hunt, and it also grants opportunities for the Chief to appear in missions where you do not play as him. The second point is that while the idea of having big chunks of the game take place in several locations, Halo campaigns have been known for each mission, more or less, having its own distinct feel and environment. While my campaign has a rather slow start, everything is going to get bigger and faster until the end, and each mission, while maybe happening on the same world, will not have the same aesthetic as the one before it. Back to the mission. This one will take place in a forest jungle environment, as this is one of the few campaigns that did not have a mission situated in a location like that. I'm thinking something along the lines of Infinity from Halo 4 and Delta Halo from Halo 2. The Guardian signature is coming deep from within a jungle, so Locke has to get there on foot. By now, Jules' Covenant has also spread out to find all the Guardians, so Locke will have to fight them as well as the Prometheans that have been activated due to Chief's actions. Story-wise, the mission is rather straightforward. As Locke continues through the bush, characters begin to speculate on what the Guardians are and what the Master Chief has to do with all this should he be involved. Lasky can remind Locke that the Chief is only missing in action and he should not be considered hostile. Locke in the game proper did not have too much development, so over the course of this game, he's going to learn to trust those that he's working with and not blindly follow every order he's been given. When Locke gets into the Guardian structure, he finally finds the Master Chief, who after briefly trying to question him, realises the Chief's been activating the Guardians. Before we can stop him though, he's confronted by the Warden, who advises Locke not to pursue the Chief. I like to think that there is a Warden at each Guardian, or at least the Warden has a body at each of the 7 Guardians. Halo hasn't been known for great boss fights, and Halo 5 lives up to this. As well as each arena being different, I think that perhaps the Warden gets a different ability or advantage each time to make the encounters feel fresh, rather than just killing the same guy 3 times in a row. Regardless, after the fight, Locke is forced to flee as the Guardian begins to unearth the ground. Spartan armor and abilities are the main reason he lives. So, we've reached the midpoint of the game. The Master Chief has been found causing the incidents that have not only been destroying environments, but also harming innocent people. While the Infinity is still apprehensive about treating the Chief as hostile, Locke has been charged by Oni to do so and to put an end to him and the Guardians. Our opening cutscene involves the Infinity discovering traces of a signal from the Guardian's location that resembles Cortana. We then get a similar discussion from the actual campaign where Lasky, Halsey, etc. argue about what her survival means. Seeing as brutes have been rather absent lately, other than Halo Wars 2, I thought this game would be a good opportunity to have them feature briefly, as the hunt is a galaxy-spanning one. It would also make me feel better knowing there's an in-game reason for having brute weapons in multiplayer. This mission will take place on a brute colony, so Locke is forced to go it alone without any other help or risk a war against the brutes. This will mean Halo 5 will be the first time we see both a brute colony and an elite one. Locke is going to ODST drop into the planet, roughly where the Guardian is supposed to be located. The mission will have details on what the brutes have been up to since the end of the war, and could even hint at the banners showing up in Halo Wars 2. The bulk of it though will be trying to learn more about what the Guardians are for and where they're going. You see the Chief a lot earlier in the mission, and he's having trouble fighting through all the brutes as well. However, while you almost get the jump on him, he uses the brutes and the Warden as a cover to activate the Guardian and escape again. I think this Warden fight could have brutes that are present during the battle as well. You could either use them to help you against the Warden, or you could just kill them for some better weaponry. At the end of the mission, we get some more intel on the Guardian's purpose and that Cortana may be the one controlling them, as it would explain the Chief's actions. It's here that they also learn about the Forerunner domain, and how Cortana may have used that to survive. The Infinity still does not know where the Guardians are teleporting to, only that it's a place called Genesis. They speculate that the only way they'll be able to find out where it is to go through after the Chief. So that brings us to the middle of the game, and where I'll leave this part. The removal of Osiris allows Locke to just have some more time to develop as a character. As well as that, I've included a few more locations to make the levels not feel the same, and have also attempted to make the Master Chief a far more active character. Blue Team is still present, and they will continue to have more to do in the latter half of the game. I'm trying to give all the characters more screen time and remove elements that are unnecessary to the story. It is much harder than I thought to include a lot of the content from the marketing campaign, particularly that of the Spartan program, but I like to think that the missions I've included will contain a few cutscenes with Locke talking to Halsey directly about the Master Chief and Cortana. The next part will detail my version of the second half of the campaign and any final notes I may have on it. Until then, I'm Rod, stay serious.